Welcome to Dan's Experience Podcast from Cubicle to Cashflow, the podcast where discipline meets opportunity and action builds freedom. I am Dan Protas. I left the corporate cubicle to build a life I love through real estate and disciplined execution. Each week, we unpack mindsets, systems, and step-by-step plays to move you closer to freedom, one door at a time. If you're ready to trade comfort for progress, you are in the right place. Let's get to work. Okay, welcome to Dan's Experience from Cubicle to Cashflow podcast, the podcast where discipline meets opportunity and action builds freedom. I am your host, Dan Protas. After leaving the corporate world behind, I set out to build financial freedom through real estate, investing, and disciplined action. Each week, I'll share real stories, lessons learned, and practical steps to help you create a life you deserve. Let's dive in. So today, I want to take you behind the scenes of my very first real estate deal. This was the moment everything became real, when theory turned into practice, and I realized that wealth building through real estate wasn't just possible, it was actually within reach. And just like any first deal, it was not perfect. I made mistakes, I had doubts, and I learned lessons. I still carry those lessons with me today. My hope is that by sharing this story, you'll walk away inspired and prepared for your own journey. So let me take a step back and I will actually talk about the first single family real estate deal that my wife and I decided to do. Okay. So at that point, I was actually a teacher and we did own our home at that time. And we were thinking about selling that home and buying a condo or a townhouse so that it's easier for us to manage the outside, so I don't have to cut the grass, do the maintenance outside with snow. Um, However, I read numerous books of Robert Kiyosaki, and one of his business books, there was a strategy how you could simply just rent out your existing home and buy another one. But at that time, my circle of friends was where, oh, you can't buy another home. You have already a mortgage. No bank is going to give you a second mortgage. But educating myself by reading some of these techniques that Robert Kiyosaki was promoting was interesting to see that if you're able to show the bank that you are able to cover your existing mortgage with a rental income coming in, there is no issue of receiving a second mortgage. So that's exactly what we did. Um, However, so at that time, my wife was very committed on selling the home. So I had to do some convincing and explaining to her how we can do this. And I clearly remember number of our walks that we took around our block, around the lake, not too far away from us, where I was explaining and selling this idea to her. And she bought it. She bought it, and she was actually very interested and very motivated to make this happen. So what we did have some relationships with realtors. At that time, we picked our best one, and we worked with her. We explained to her how we wanted to structure this, and we put the house on the market. At the same time, we already knew which house we wanted, and we started to roll the ball. So our mindset, we were very excited and interested in getting it done. However, it was kind of unknown territory, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do that. But somehow things just fall into place where they need to be, and things happen. Just to give you a little background, so we, like I mentioned already, so this was just simply we were renting out a single family home. It was a split level, built about 1950s, and we were looking to buy a condo or a townhouse where it's much easier for us to maintain. And the beautiful thing, what made us realize that it's good to own rather than to rent, is that over the years, with just a normal inflation of 2-3%, your monthly payment on the mortgage, interest, insurance that you pay usually falls behind as far as with the current market rents, and compared to what you paid 5 years ago to what people pay now, that payment is relatively low. So when I priced it out, how much the rent for that single family home would be, we would be cash flowing at least $500, $600 a month. So that was a nice cash flow for us to have at that time. Some interesting stories at that time. So essentially, when we were looking for condo or a townhouse, my wife was very motivated on this one place, and I think it was listed for like 435,000. Then they decreased the price to somewhere to between like 420, 425. And my wife wanted to just give the asking price of 420, I believe, or so, because she fell in love with the property. But I stood firm on the price and our number at that time, what we could afford. And I told her that at that time we could just simply do 400,000. We can't go any more than that. And thankfully we did that. And I was actually very happy that we did that, because initially the seller, they countered us. I don't remember, 415 or so. Uh, and we said we can't go up any higher, so we're just gonna stay firm at 400. So that's it. We walked away. The seller walked away. However, a month later, the seller comes back to us again and says whether we were still interested in that condo. My immediate reaction was, let's offer 375. However, my wife was very in love with that place, so we ended up just going, uh, offering our 400K, and it was accepted. And we closed on that property, and everything worked out the way we wanted. We were Before closing, we were able to find a tenant uh, paying us not nice rent that was able to cover the mortgage on that first home, and we were uh, able to get the price we wanted on the condo that we bought. Another lesson from there, why I stood on the 400,000 price, was simply because I was able to see that the place was a little bit overpriced, and the price sheet that the seller was asking. And so the reason I'm saying that is because I was able to confirm that, because during our process, during the underwriting period, we did the appraisal. So the bank appraised the condo at 405,000. So imagine if we went and offered 425, whatever they were asking at that time, we would have to either renegotiate the price at that time or come up with additional 20,000 to make up the difference. So that's why it was worth for me to stand ground on that 400,000 price tag. So that was interesting, but also very it was a great learning experience. And also, so just to give you a little breakdown, so we actually, as far as the financing, so we were able to get several referrals from our realtors, on a couple banks and a couple mortgage brokers. There was one that stood out, and we worked with him, and we went with 90 loan to value, and we put down 10%. So we actually did pay PMI on the property, on the with the insurance, because we couldn't come up more than 10%. So that was our structure. And as the time was going, so with that rental, I actually self-managed it. Whatever the breaks came up, I had the tenant either text me, call me, so I was dealing with those. On the bigger issues, I did hire contractors. Um, so that's how I managed it, and I was able to save on the management of the property myself. So some of the challenges, I would say the underwriting for me was very basic. Essentially, what I did, I just was able to calculate or project what would be the rent, my current expenses. So that was easy. I never even knew anything about T12, what that was, or that even existed at that time. And it's more for like commercial um, real estate. So I'll talk more about that in future episodes, talking about commercial properties. But I had very basic knowledge of underwriting, and all it was just simply what's the rent, what my expense, and I wasn't even hoping or taking into account the maintenance expense. I'm just trying to think. So due diligence surprises. So on the condo, there weren't any because the place was on a newer end. So I think it was built like 2000. So there weren't any issues there. Um, but with our rental, there were things, and the house was actually, getting old. So you could see that it was. Needing some care, some power washing on the outside, and some couple improvements that needed to be done inside as well. Emotional challenge, I would say that during that time, I always had that back of my mind whether that decision to rent the first home and buy another one was the right one. However, after getting the Zelle transfer of my first month rental income was great. So we used Zelle or Venmo at that time to receive the rent. It was very direct, directly set up. So simply just by having the direct contact to the tenant. So that's how we negotiated how the money were going to be transferred. So yeah, I mean, receiving that first rental payment was great. Made me realize it works, and I was happy to actually put my knowledge to action and into an actual deal. Because before, I just kept reading and reading, and I just used to tell my wife, like, I don't want to read anymore. I want to put this to action. I want to put this into real life. So that was interesting and rewarding. So a couple lessons that I want to share that I learned is the importance of discipline, sticking to your goals, and just getting yourself out there by reading different books that interest you. Develop that routine, stick to it, and then personally, I just got sick of it, and just I'm like, I need to act. I need to put this to work. So at that time, I had a very basic team of realtors, a banker or a mortgage broker, and I didn't even have a lawyer. But it's good to have a team around you, and I always do suggest for you to use a realtor, because realtors, they do come in handy with their connections and their ability to convince the other brokers. So definitely suggest for you to work with one. What I would do differently if I had to do that again, uh, two two items that I would do differently. I would start that journey of real estate sooner, and I would start reading more books about real estate sooner. Those are the two lessons that I want to emphasize. And an advice for my listeners: don't wait until you feel 100% ready. Start underwriting, start networking. And when you don't know how to underwrite, just start. Look what your income is going to be, what your expenses. Compare. If you see if your numbers are accurate, and if it's cash flow positive, just run with it. Try your best. Even if it's not, sometimes it may take a little bit longer to get to cash flow positive. Maybe you can increase rents a little bit later, year from there, or maybe a 6 months from there. So it's not going to be perfect. Your first deal is not going to be perfect, but it will be powerful. No books, no classes, no podcasts will teach you these type of lessons. It's once you go through them, those are the best lessons. So at this point, I just want to thank you for joining me on this third episode from Cubicle to Cashflow. I hope my story encourages you to take the first step toward building wealth through real estate. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with one friend who needs to hear it, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss next episode, Systems versus Goals. Until then, stay disciplined, stay focused, and keep building the life you deserve. Thanks for listening to Dan's Experience podcast from Cubicle to Cashflow. I am Dan Protas. If today helped, follow or subscribe, share it with a friend, and drop a quick review. It really helps the show grow. Remember, discipline meets opportunity, and action builds freedom. Take one step today, then join me next episode.